Now, one other note with viewports is that the way that I use it is rather than clicking between model space and paper space in order to work with the information, is that I actually maximize my viewports. Okay, and what that does is that if I double click within the viewport, what pops up, okay, next to our locking and next to our scale list is what's called this maximize viewport option. And if I click on that, what that does is that actually maximizes your viewport to the extents of your screen, and it actually accesses model space in doing so. Okay, so basically what I can do is I can click on this. If I have any original objects, I can work with it. But essentially what this allows me to do is to access that drawing in this maximize viewport, so that when I'm done with it, I can click on that button again to minimize the viewport. Okay, and then that'll bring me back into this with the changes that are made in the model space. So that's another way of working with that. Now to continue on with our, I'm just going to close that window out real quick. To continue on with our title block, okay, you'll notice that when we went through our title block example that we left all of this information blank. Okay, and this is the only information that we're going to fill in from file to file. So drawing number, drawing title, scale, and date. And to do this, all I'm going to do is I'm going to use my text. So I'm going to type in MT for multi-line text. I'm going to specify my corner, and I'm just going to type in all caps, okay, A1. And I'm going to scale it as I need to and change, I can use my text style, or I can just use my text notes above here. And let's say scale this. It's a little bit bigger. Okay, we want that one nice and big so that we can recognize that, okay, and see it without having to guess. I'm going to create my own title block text layer, okay, or let's say sheet text layer, sheet text. I'm going to change the color of that to align with my CTB file. Okay, let's just say blue. Hit OK. And I'm going to assign that to its own layer. Okay, so that always goes on its own layer. Okay, again, only those select things should be on layer 0. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy it. Okay, let's scale it down. Let's say this is my original plan. And again, you should always type in caps. That's actually the industry standard. And I'm just going to eyeball it, centered there. Scale, we can say 1/16 inch. We can just cancel that one. Equals 1 foot 0 inches. So that's saying that if somebody took a scale to it, that a 1/16 of an inch would equal a foot. Okay, that's the common way that we denote that. And then I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to paste it over, and I'm going to just double click on it, and let's say 2014. Okay, these I can scale down to. They actually look kind of big, so I'm going to scale it down a little bit. And what you can also do is you can take your construction line and it'll snap to points on your XREF, so that you can take these and you can snap those to that line. So I'm going to scale this guy down to 1/2, and then I'm going to snap it from that point to that point on the construction line. Okay, again, just make sure that your text is at least 1/8 of an inch tall. Okay, so that's all the information that I have to do for this sheet. So that's my A1, and that's all set. I'm going to hit save, and now what I want to do is I want to add to this sheet set. So I'm going to have to make another sheet. Now, rather than doing it all over again, okay, what I can do is I can actually do a save as. So I'm going to save as, and I'm going to save this now as A2 and hit save. Okay, so now this is my A2 sheet, and if I look at my list, my A2 sheet is actually my modified plan. So I'm going to double click on this text and change it to A2. I'm going to change this to modified. Now I'm going to have to kind of leave this for a second. okay, and see what scale it's actually going to be good with. So I'm going to go back into my model space. And what I want to do is I want to detach this XREF from model space. So I'm going to go into my XREF manager. If you don't have it open already, the command is XREF. And I'm going to right click on my title, or sorry, not my title block, my original plan file, and I'm going to detach it. Okay, that's the only way to get rid of it from the file. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach my modified plan now instead. Okay, so this should be my modified plan. Okay, doesn't look much different, but I know that it's my modified plan with the notes, or the name that I gave it. So I'm going to click on my layout one again, and what happens is my viewport is blank. Okay, so if I double click inside of that and I do a zoom extents, okay, so I'm zooming to the extents of the, oops, sorry, let's unlock that. Now zoom extents, and zoom to the extents of the viewport, okay, nothing shows up. And I can try to, scale in, scale out, and try to see where my XREF is. But a lot of times what happens, and typically what happens, is that when you do detach the XREF and attach it again, okay, it doesn't, for some reason, show up again in the viewport. And that's fine, okay? All I have to do is select this and get rid of it, so I erased it. And then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Layout, just as we did before. I'm going to click on Rectangular Viewport, and I'm going to create a new one. Okay, and now what shows up is my modified plan. I'm going to assign this to my viewport layer, and I'm going to give it 16th inch scale. If you need to change the scale, that's fine, and I'm going to double click on it, get rid of my grid. If you need to change the scale on it, that's fine. Okay, basically, it's you should kind of keep the same scale from 1 to 2, but if it doesn't, if it's not going to work, then that's fine to just change the scale if you need to. Okay, so that's my sheet A2. Just do a zoom extents, because that's a nice habit to get into when you leave your file. And I'm going to hit save. And then what I'm going to do for A3, so I'm going to do a save as. I'm going to see sheet A3. And what E3 is this is essentially the detail, okay, of the area that we're going to be working in for the rest of the semester. Okay, so we're going to take, we're going to first have an original plan, then we're going to show our modified plan, and now what we're going to do is we're going to zoom in on a detail, and we're going to be working on that for the rest of the semester. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to A3, sorry, and this is modified plan detail. And if I need to move this over, I will move it over. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my viewport, and I'm going to change the scale, let's say to 1/4 inch. Double click inside of it, hold down my scroll button to pan. This might be a little big for it, so again, I'm just going to bring it down to, let's say, 1/8. And this is the area that I want to highlight. Okay, now what happens is that when you start to try to figure out the information that you want to show, okay, you have to be sensitive to things like where you're going to cut it, okay, and things like door swings, anything like that. So you'll see that there's other options with our layout, is that we can either have a rectangular viewport, or you'll see that there's a polygonal viewport where I can make it whatever shape I want it to be. And C for close, you just draw it exactly like a polyline. Okay, you'll see that now it only shows a portion of it. Put that on my viewport layer. And what I can also do is I can also draw a polyline. And I can use my options to turn that into, sorry, I clicked on a little too much and it compressed itself. But what I can do is I can actually change the option and click on object, and I can take this object and I can turn that now into a viewport. Okay, and with each one of these grips, I can stretch them like other objects, and I can adjust them as I need to. Okay, one other thing to note is that, as I said, you know, it's very common to have multiple viewports on one drawing. Okay, very, 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 very common. That you might have at multiple scales too as well. So in this case, you know, what we're going to have is we're going to have this detail at, you know, 1/8 inch. This, you know, if I want another one, I can change that viewport to 12, or to, sorry, 12, 1/2 inch. And I can start to do details and drawings at different scales on my drawing as I need to. And you'll see that this is very common for construction sets, because there are going to be some details that need to be at one scale. You know, you might need to zoom in a little bit, that shows it at a different scale. So it's very, very common to have viewports at different scales on a sheet. If that's the case, and it's not going to be that really for this class, but if that's the case, just make sure that under scale, okay, and we're going to get into tags later on, but just note that this marks out the scale for the whole sheet. Okay, so you just have to be a little bit mindful of that 16th inch is now not going to apply to everything else. But I'm going to delete that. I'm going to put this in the middle, and if I ever want to double check what my scale is, I can click on that viewport and you'll see that it's 1/8. Okay, so I'm going to change this to 1/8. Okay, save that. And then you'll see that sheet A3, A4, A5, A6 are going to be set up with different bits of information. Okay, and what we're actually going to be doing is we're going to be turning layers on and off for each one of those sheets.